Well, welcome everyone. We're going to get started here in a short order, and I see a few familiar names that are joining us today, and some familiar names that had registered, and hopefully I won't have the many dogs running in and out of my office distracting us too much today. But anyway, not sure you could hear that, but I ran over the puppy sitting a 4-month-old toy poodle who just got run over by the wheel of my chair. So I apologize to Libby, and hopefully that won't be too much of a distraction here. But anyway, we're getting rolling. We may, in fact, be joined by Dr. Greg Moody, and we may, in fact, be joined by Mindy Godfrey, both who are on our team here. But regardless of that, what we want to do is kind of expand on, think about, anticipate, and expand on really how to be a Maverick advisor, how to stand out in your area, and how to really become the one of the books I was catching up on, as kind of an aside. I've read it several times, but it's Blue Ocean. And the whole idea of the book is you want to be a category of one. Instead of trying to compete by being more credentials, by being cheaper, by being more responsive, by being located closer to them, by specializing more in an area. The idea is to be the only person who does what you do, and therefore you eliminate any and all competition. Because if there's nobody else who does what you do, then or certainly no one else that they know about who positions themselves as the expert at what you do, then it's the easiest possible way to compete. And not to beat this drum over and over and over again. If you've watched many of the podcasts, which I recommend, you can go to our website and go to subscribe to podcasts. So if you had probably if you Google financial advisor marketing podcast, Stephen Oliver's Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast, there are several that have similar names, and some of the others are quite good too, I must say. But you'll find that, or go to my YouTube channel. But you'll hear me beat that drum quite a bit, and hopefully you've read the book. Let's see, I've got one right here. Here was an artist proof copy, but hopefully you've read the book. But the never-ending beat the drum is worse than anybody I've ever seen, worse than any group I've ever seen. Maybe CPAs are a close second. But financial advisors seem to be having a contest to see who can be the most bland, boring, and the most alike, and who can stand out the least. And I think part of it perhaps is, for those of you who are, whatever term you want to use, but captive, working within a big behemoth that handcuffs you and ties and constricts and controls what you do. And for others, it's just at whatever level you're thinking, whether you're your own compliance officer as an independent, or whether you're having to go through your office's compliant officer for many things, is you're in a business where people are cowed by compliance way above and beyond anything that's the ethics and legality of it, and cowered into submission by being as bland as humanly possible and as common as humanly possible. The way I think that in this industry you get around all of that, and I don't mean in any devious way, but what you have restrictions on, and that's been changed quite a bit recently, were things like direct testimonials of proof of performance, earnings claims, or annual return percentages, and so forth. And and the rules have changed, as you probably know. The FTC issued new or SEC issued new rulings on that, and you are allowed to use earnings claims. And frankly, if you didn't know it, all industries have an awful lot of restrictions on testimonials and claims that you make. I did quite a bit of work marketing in the franchise industry, and their hands are really tightly bound as well. But the last thing you want to do is you want to be playing this game of being no different than anybody else and as bland as humanly possible, and only distinguishing yourself through an alphabet of numbers that nobody else understands and nobody else knows. Give me half a second. One of our panelists is trying to get in here. Sorry about that pause. We have Dr. Greg Moody is our one today who's unable to figure out how to get in to the advisor room as a panelist. So we shall see if he manages to accomplish that or not. Keep your eyes out. We shall see if he tunes in. But anyway, where I was going with that is my recommendation, and it's something that occasionally you end up with a company where the compliance officer gets just weird about some of these other things as well, and that certainly gives you an idea about whether you should be in that office or not, working directly under the thumb of that person or not, as an aside. But always look at what makes you unique as a person, what makes you unique to people that you meet, and think about it this way: if you were to go to a party and you're to meet a new person, and the most boring thing you could possibly do is say, what do you do? I'm a CPA. What do you do? I'm a financial advisor. Well, you just shut down the conversation of boring A and boring B, and two people with nothing to have a conversation about, right? On the other hand, how do you build rapport with new people when you meet new people out and about? You ask about commonalities. What school did you go to? Are you originally from here? There he is. There's Mindy. Okay, that's a different person. Mindy Gregg was also trying to join us here. But where I was going with that is think about if you went to a party and you're not on full ass business mode and you're just trying to meet people. If you introduce yourself and you're trying to build rapport with somebody, what would you be talking about? What commonalities would you be talking about? Well, you wouldn't be talking about, well, I'm a CHFC and I got my certification in retirement income distribution and blah blah blah. That wouldn't be the conversation you'd be having. You'd be having the conversation of, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? What are your hobbies? Do you have kids? How old are they? Do you have dogs or cats? It'd be all of your personal interests. A friend of mine, he does what we do as far as coaching and marketing support and so forth for attorneys. And, he talks about your elevator pitch. He says he's an elder law attorney. Again, a good comparable for you guys in a lot of ways. But his conversation, his elevator pitch is all about talking about coaching his kids soccer league, and and all of the parents funny stories and the other referee funny stories and so forth. And then, oh, by the way, I happen to do elder law, and it makes him infinitely memorable, and it makes him endearing, and it creates a humanized element to what he's doing. And I think within your practice, far from being the bland, no different from anybody else, cowed into submission by somebody who's in almost all cases never made a sale a day in their life, who has no interest in helping you make a sale, far from being cowed by all of the overreach of compliance and the fear factor and everything else. What you've got to do is say, I'm a unique individual. This is what makes me unique, and own it. And one element of that, which is a subset of this, is having a niche market and being an expert in this niche. Clearly, in the age of AI, the age of everything else, all the online options, robo-advisor options, et cetera, is if you're not specialized and if you're not like the person in a particular niche industry for a company and so forth, you're going to be left out in the dust. But the starting point is to be a personality, to be interesting, to be have something exciting about you, and sometimes it's, I know an advisor, and he's a really nice guy and very successful, but he's into classic Mustangs and buying 60s era muscle cars, restoring them, and one thing or another. And then when you get to his business, he doesn't talk anything about that. Well, I mean, it should be his office has pictures of the different restoration projects, and he should have a model on his desk. And hell, if I was doing it right, I would have the office space with the glass wall, and you look into the classic Mustang restorations, and you have, I'd decorate his whole office that way. Well, you have something to talk about. And what the fear is, and what the argument is, don't talk about sex, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. But it's almost like the idea is don't talk about your own level of wealth. And there's the golden retriever's tail in the picture there. So we'll see how this goes. But there's almost a rule among people that they don't talk about themselves, and they don't talk about their interests, and they don't look for commonalities. But the best way to build rapport with somebody on a one-on-one basis, most of us know this already, is you figure out what you have in common and what's interesting. Hey, Mindy, can you help Dr. Moody with the technical aspects? Send him an invite again for the webinar and the link and all that stuff, so he can figure out how to join us.
Yes, I'm working on that now, sir.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. But if he can think straight after spending a week in the Caribbean.
Yes, I'm working on that too.
Yes. Okay. We won't go there anyway. But anyway, I'll take a breath here. I just wanted to to start with that. Is what's always interesting to another person is not the credentials or the description of the career or one thing or another. What's interesting to another person is, who is this person, right? And especially when you're talking about, I've got somebody with $500,000, or I've got somebody with $5 million to $10 million. I want to know that this is a human being that I trust. I want to know that this is somebody I like. This is somebody I click with, somebody I have some commonality with, somebody that I like and appreciate. And if I don't get that, if I don't have some way of pinning down whether this is somebody I like versus they're just a suit at a desk in an office somewhere, and I'm looking at their company's ratings and figuring out whether I want to give this company money because of how big and strong it is. And not that that's not important, but it's not the starting point of any relationship. And frankly, it's not the starting point of your marketing. Is you'd probably be much better suited to just sit down and take a personal inventory. What are my hobbies? What's interesting about my family? What's interesting about my lineage? What's interesting about my hobbies? What's interesting about my pets? What's interesting about things that I collect, things that I'm interested in? And then what happens is you build a list of things that create a human being behind the pale, dull, boring image. That then you can build there he is. He actually managed to get in here. So we're going to have some, I don't think he's going to, Mindy, I don't think he's going to take Jeff Smith's title for inability to get logged in. Greg, we may permanently consider shutting down a meeting and stranding everybody as a Greg Moody, but you have about 9,832 more inabilities to get into the meeting in order to catch up with Jeff Smith. So you're safe on that one not being named a Jeff Smith. But there we go. We have the full team for today anyway, and Greg, I had just droned on for an insufferable period of time about figuring out what your hobbies are, figuring out what makes you interesting, how boring ass the title of financial advisor is, and the designations and distinctions, all of that stuff that goes with it, and how people are cowered into submission by either their level of captivity or the compliance people. My favorite term was Dan Kennedy's old partner, Bill Glazier. And he called it the sales prevention department. But it's certainly true in almost every industry, but certainly in this one, that every corporation is staffed by people whose job it feels like is to put a roadblock on making a sale rather than facilitate. I don't know why it's a high level of stupidity. I was just reading about this. My friend Dave D. He was just blogging about the previous company he was working with, which is a marketing coaching company, and how they were at every turn getting mad at the salespeople for producing sales rather than coaching them on. Every company should know their bread and butter is the front end, get new clients in the door, keep them long term, and support their salespeople, who are the number one most important person in their company, and then number two most important, which again, there's a huge disconnect. I can't tell you, as you know, with a TV on the background, I see all this advertising for these big companies and feel like throwing a paperweight at the TV at how stupid they are.
Well, I think, I think buried into that message is the message you get from corporate. I think it assumes that they're right. And I think what we have to assume is that mostly they're wrong.
Yeah.
Is mostly they don't know how to market. They don't know how to get you new clients. They don't know how to get those clients turned into long-term happy customers. They're almost always working at odds. And that seems counterintuitive. You work for a large company like, let's say, Northwest Mutual, LPL, a big company, and they've been around a long time. They're billion-dollar companies, so they must know what they're doing, right? Well, their strategy hasn't been look out for you. Their strategy has been look out for bringing in a lot of advisors in the front end most of the time, and then see who sinks and see who swims. And they really haven't had to be individually. They aren't known for looking out for an individual advisor with their own interests, self-interest, quirks, lifestyle needs, and being a personal coach for your success. They've been really known for selling their properties or their funds or whatever their particular product is. They're known for their product, not for them being the perfect entity to help you. That's where we come in, I guess. And so that's what our job is, and that's why we're pretty well needed by the people that are all you guys that are listening. But if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense then, that those companies are not, their job is not to help you. Their job is to sell their product and to make sure that there's a lot of different things moved. So that it would make sense that isn't that they wouldn't necessarily be invested in you and helping you get a lot of clients and helping you keep them a long time, because it's not really what they're about.
Yeah. That's right. And again, I was having the conversation with Dan Kennedy recently, and his take was that most advisors get brought up in a role of the sales mode, but they don't understand marketing, so they don't understand the whole process to get a qualified person in front of you to make the sale. And sometimes they think in terms of advertising, buy lead somewhere or one thing or another, and they think in terms of making a sale, but they don't understand the marketing umbrella, if that's the right way to phrase it, of all of the steps to get to the point where you've built the role of being the ideal expert, where you've created that blue ocean idea where you're the one and only go-to source for whatever it is that you're going to target on doing, and the process to nurture and develop and create a flow. And again, the idea that the only way to create new clientele is through referrals. One is complete, absolute, unmitigated, forgive my language, horseshit. I mean, it's very limiting. But on the other hand, most of the advisors that tell us that they're convinced the only way to create traffic of new clients is through referral are not implementing referral systems in any effective and consistent way. They're maybe every time they meet with a client or a new client, they're begging them for their clients, or they're using the old trite, I get compensated two ways. You send me your friends, and I get commissions on what you do. Well, that doesn't get you very far. But instead it's absolutely true. Qualified referrals are a wonderful source of traffic, but you get qualified referrals by making it easy for your clients to bring their friends to you. We have found that pass along tools and events, as broad categories, are two of the best ways to do that. Number three, we know that constant and forever communication with your clients, whether it be gifting or daily or twice daily email, or whether it's a mailed newsletter every other week or even just once a month, but constant and never-ending communication is a key. We also know that educating your clients on what the range of problems that you can solve are is the most important step on helping to expand the range of what they're doing with you. So you really get to the point where you're 100%, which should be the base criteria up front, is you're managing every bit about their financial situation. But number two is, without that education, they come across all kinds of situations where you're not only not top of mind, they never even think about you. Because you may be handling their retirement distribution, and their son or daughter is worrying about college planning, or worrying about disability potential income or something like that. And if you don't educate them on your range of capabilities, that you would never even come to mind.
Yeah, and that's something that I think when we start working with somebody, there's almost always a huge amount of one term about it would be money lying around on the floor, where they're not even going back and having good communication with their clients that are helping them out in a very positive way. This is not being manipulative in any way whatsoever, where you'd work with your clients and meet with them a little more regularly than probably what you're doing now, and making sure that they know all the different things that you can help them with. You said it a really good way, is problems that you can solve. And so many of our people we start working with, have 20% of the possibility of what they could be working. 20% of their investment assets are with them, or they work with them on other products that they could have, or they're just not meeting with them regularly to make sure that, or not asking them for their clients to put all their assets into their portfolio with them. It's just kind of, I wouldn't say negligent, because nobody's ever told them to do that before. Somebody's told them to, meet with them and, okay, what do you want to do? Okay, I'll do that for you, rather than have a more thorough exploration of what would be helpful for them. The other thing I was going to say about what you said earlier is when you're doing things right, don't be surprised that other people tell you that you're wrong. So when you're working correctly and doing more marketing and doing things that they're really going to get you clients, and nobody else is doing that, the tendency for everybody else around you is going to say, well, you're acting crazy. You're doing things that are never going to work and are not going to, even tried and true things that we can help you with. And part of the reason there is that if you're doing something that's unusual, people are going to look at you as an outlier. That's what we want you to be. We want you to be in the top 1%. Well, guess what? Those are outliers, and people are going to look at you as being unusual. That's kind of what you want. But during that process, it's going to be lonely, it's going to be different because you're going to be, as you talked about, finding things that you're interested in, looking more thoroughly at the niches that you want to work in. Nobody else is doing that. They're just sitting around waiting for people to maybe walk into their door or maybe call them on the phone. Oh, I think we lost your audio.
We
Unless-
did. I muted
okay.
myself. And failed to unmute before I started talking. I don't think I have a career ahead of me in radio. But I was looking quickly for that Ken Fisher quote, and since you had mentioned that, which I keep referring back to, I did put it in the book, but it was basically when he started doing direct response marketing and newspaper, on radio, on the online, and so forth. Everybody told him it was daft and that it wouldn't work. And then when he started doing the same thing on an international basis, everybody told him, was like that word daft, that it wouldn't work, and everything he did just kept working and working and working. So that's exactly right.
Well, there's another point of that. Sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but if you're the one doing things that nobody else is doing, if they work, you've got the perfect marketing, right? If you're doing stuff that is effective and you're the only one doing it, I'll say it again, then if nobody else is doing it, you've got a free reign until somebody catches up. And very frequently, I think the Fisher quote was that he was worried also, the other part of that was he was worried also about all the big companies stealing his ideas, and they just never stole his ideas because they weren't smart enough to do it.
Well, it wasn't that. They had already concluded that they wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work.
They had concluded that they wouldn't work, which I mean
you
is
could say they're not
even
smart
dumber.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's even worse.
yeah.
Even though there's obvious, and to be fair, I think it's some of the people that we talk to, we suggest something that might be perfect for them, and they've tried it, and they say to us, well, I tried that, but it didn't work. And very frequently a marketing strategy, and in your book you talk about this a lot, that there's some strategies that you've tried and they may not have worked, but you didn't have the other piece, that there's small tweaks that make a huge difference in the effectiveness of the marketing. And that small tweak could be, very minimal, but it can make a 20-to-1 difference in the results that you get. And in a lot of companies that you can outsource these kind of things to, don't know these tweaks. They do Facebook marketing for you, or LinkedIn marketing, and you end up getting really weak leads, and they're not very high quality. That's some of the reasons why you end up getting frustrated with throwing your money over the fence to marketing companies and not getting very good results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And let's talk at a macro level now on some particular strategies, not down the weed tactics, but some strategies. Is what, again, the very first thing is you want to become about creating a persona of who you are that humanizes you, makes you memorable, and helps you stand out from the crowd. And any level of trying to do that with credentials and certifications and all of the kind of normal, Mindy, Greg, I have 14,000 or so advisors that are, I'm connected with on LinkedIn, and 90% of them have RICP and CFP and 15 other letters after their names. And it always just, I find it humorous, because no one who is coming in their front door, if they're doing effective marketing, was out searching for somebody with that designation. Now, as part of the sales process, it may be the justification for why you are a highly qualified, incredible person to handle their income distribution or their whatever it might be. It might be that, and it might be that in a corporate environment that it's useful. Maybe you get internal referrals because you're the guy that has something that they understand. But to the great unwashed masses, to the general public, to the people that you're looking for to bring in, whether they have 50 million in assets or they have 200,000 in assets, they don't know, they don't care, they're not looking for that, right? But then the next thing is to truly become a specialist at something or for someone. And what, short of something that is obvious and stands out that you love, we have advisors we work with. I see Daniel Hecht on here. Daniel, a former police commissioner in a small town, actively targeting police and police commissioners and so forth around the country. Makes perfect sense. Same thing with we have somebody we're working with who is a private pilot plane owner targeting plane owners. I have my continual project, Greg, of trying to get Peter to target every Porsche enthusiast in the country, unsuccessfully to date, but it would be a perfect audience for him. But sometimes it comes natural from your resume, from your hobby list, and from your background. Other times you have to go actively seek it out. My friend David Phelps, who actively is niching on dentists to show them how to create enough of an income stream that they don't have to work in the dental office anymore, regardless of whether they manage to sell the practice or not. That's one example. But the other might be wherever you're at. Greg, I don't know if you remember them, but Eric and Hi, they're in Houston. So all of a sudden we help them ingratiate themselves with all the C-suite executives of the major oil companies in their immediate area, both through the HR people, which is the, kind of the bottom up range, but also through the C-suite process. And they became the go-to guys for those companies. So they happened to be in the immediate vicinity at the time of BP and a number of other massive international oil companies. Well, that's when you can do the book on, maximizing your retirement as an oil company executive, or even on the other end as a wildcatter or something like that. That's where you can get in and you can help them understand, maximize, and plan for their own development within that industry. There's so many different ways you can do it. So to me, if you don't have anything at all interesting about you, you went to a boring college, got a degree in finance, got your Series 7 and 65 or 63 and all that stuff, and you just started, pitching annuities, and you can't come up with anything else that's interesting because that wasn't very interesting. Then you start withdrawing a radius and say, who are the biggest employers in the area? Who could I become? Could I become the expert for Procter and Gamble or for IBM or for Google or for Microsoft or Vonage or whoever it might be? Can I go through my client list and figure out who I already have that have those affiliations, and how do I work my way through them to expand? Can I, FedEx a package, email, LinkedIn Messenger, connect with all the top C-suite executives, management level people, and HR people in the top 20 employers in my area, and then become the go-to specialist for those areas. And we have seen that be a marvelous strategy. Everything from, taking a very generic book and then putting a cover on it that looks like it's their colors and their logo, to creating chapter, a report, a blog post, a webinar, or a chapter on how specifically within that company to maximize your outcome. Mindy, Greg, anything to add to that before we move along?
Yeah, and one way to conceptualize this is if you try to be the expert at something technical. So in other words, of advising them financially, so advising them on their 401ks or their annuities or whatever piece, that's pretty hard to compete against. There's a lot of other people, as you said, with the same letters behind their name. And what are you really going to argue? What are you going to make the case out of on the technical side? And if we were talking to I don't know, computer programmers about how they could get their place out in the market and market themselves, it's kind of hard to make that case. You're the best at X. But if you are marketing that you're the best for a person, the Porsche owner or the person who works with police department, police chiefs in a police department, or the person who works with C-suite executives in oil companies, that resonates a lot more with somebody than some technical thing. Number one, they have to understand the technical. Why are you better at that age range of financial product? And we have so many people that it's almost 95% of the people we talk to, and we talk to hundreds and hundreds of people. It seems like every month. That's probably a little more than we talk to, but it feels like about that.
Let's just say a lot.
It's a bunch. And we ask, well, what's the kind of target market that you have? And they say 55 and up, nearing retirement with over $500,000 investable assets, or some target number roughly like that. And that's kind of everybody. You want generally a little bit older people with a bunch of money. That's so general and broad. It's very hard for you to be the expert at that. So to narrow this, and that if you're on the other side of that equation and think about yourself and who you are, and if somebody was going to talk to you about your financial future, and it was to you as a person that was in one of those niches, that you were retiring or close to retirement in the police department, or you were an oil, like you said, a wildcatter, some of those guys make tons of money. They're a good market. And to not be lazy about that, because when we bring this up frequently, then somebody says, well, okay, I'll go after doctors and lawyers. Well, that's really general too. What kind of doctors? Do you have any affiliation with doctors? Do you know anything about them? And to be fair, I think Mr. Phelps that you're talking about, he's not a dentist, right? The one that works.
No, he in his case, he was a dentist. He has a really interesting backstory, as a matter of fact. But he was a dentist. His daughter had serious health issues. He had to get out of, spending 60 hours a week staring, and see, that story is part of what made this whole thing successful. Yeah.
In that case, that does make that works with him, and he has personal experience. But we have some other people, and I know we've worked with people that are in the chiropractic niche, and they weren't chiropractors. They just understand that group. And there's people in other technical niches, and they just learned because for some reason they had some interest in those groups.
Well, let's talk about that for half a second, though, because I think that's important. Is if you were going to become the go-to person for cosmetic plastic surgeons, right? What do you do? Well, the first thing is you figure out how their language patterns are. What do they talk about? What their needs are, what their problems are, what their business looks like, right? And so what do? You go subscribe to all their trade magazines and start reading their trade magazines. You go hang out in the groups online, whatever that might be, in LinkedIn or in Facebook or wherever, and you start listening to what their concerns are, what their needs are, and so forth. And then you go meet with a couple of them. Perhaps you already have some as clients, but you just have the conversation of, when 2 or 3 plastic surgeons get together, and it seems like you guys have a really high case value and a lot of cash flow, but what are their concerns? What are their needs? What are the risks? And by the way, if they go to you start looking at when they retire, are they able to sell a practice, or really is it hand it off to one of the other surgeons and hope they get a monthly payout, which never happens. How does that work, right? But it's important to know all that stuff. If they grow their business and at the end they turn 60 and they sell it for $5 million and they're fat, dumb, and lazy, it's a whole different conversation than if they build up a business that really isn't worth much. Perhaps they think it is, but it's not. The other thing is then you'd go and find out who else sells to them. So there's equipment sellers, there's people who are pitching them on helping grow their business. There's people who are pitching them on sales advice, marketing advice, online, offline lead generation. You can go through the list. Well, who of those could I partner with? Right. And again, you mentioned David. Well, that's how David got a huge head of steam, is a mutual friend of ours, does business coaching for dentists. And so all of a sudden he becomes a keynote speaker at a convention of 500 dentists and rounds up 20 of them all in one, on one day. And then you're off to the races, right? So once you really target in on who is it that I would like to work with, or who is it that looks like good suspects, now you want to learn everything you can about them, because when you're having the marketing conversation, when you're doing advertising, what you want is it's getting inside the conversation already going on in their mind, using their terminology. And the people who do it well, any number of our friends who do it well, they just assume, I know people who work, like you said, with chiropractors, and they just, they'll walk into a meeting or a convention and they'll, say, "Oh, hi, doctor," and they'll just assume they're one of them, and they're not. But that's how fluent you should become on their language, and how confident you should be on what their concerns are, what they're worried about, plus what the reality of their financial outcomes look like.
Yeah, and that's not misleading at all. You're not trying to manipulate anybody at all. It's just being clear that you're the go-to person in this niche, in this niche for this, part of what their world is. And I think what's embedded in what you said as well is you're asking questions that are beyond, just are they putting money in an IRA, or what are they doing with their investment wealth? It's beyond that, so you understand a little bit of what their world is, because they may be impending selling their business. They may need to buy property. What's the advantage of them that has to do with their wealth management in terms of buying property? How is that all going to fit in their financial picture? And if you might be catching somebody that has, a growing practice, let's say the plastic surgeons, a lot of times those guys will buy a building and, run their practice out of it, or be in a larger practice, or they'll have partnerships. Understanding some of that would be important if you're going to go, that particular niche. Now, if you were working with, let's say, airplane owners, like one of our other clients, there would be other personal things that would go along with that, and what are their needs and fears and wants. And you mentioned, that would be a great thing to write an article about, maybe about one of those specific needs, fears, wants that have to do with them. Now, is 80% of what you might work with them on the same as what you'd work with somebody else in that tax bracket? Sure, it might be 80%,
perhaps 98%. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not. We're not telling you have to go to college and become an MD to work with people in a niche. But if you're the go-to guy for, let's say, plastic surgeons, that means something. It doesn't mean something if you're the guy for doctors and lawyers.
Yeah. It's way too big, right? If there's 3 million of them in the country, and there's very little in common other than they went to med school or went to law school, that tends not to help you narrow it down and stand out from the crowd, right?
It doesn't, sorry to interrupt you, but it doesn't have to be. We keep talking about niche marketing. Probably ought to go into something else, but it doesn't have to also be so job specific, because we've had some clients that work with people from Texas Tech,
Mm-hmm.
or the go-to, Texas Tech graduates may have things happening. There's a lot of Texas Tech graduates that do XYZ, or, I'm a graduate of Arizona State, too many times. So, then that ends up being a little bit of a niche that's kind of fun and exciting, and makes it interesting. Are there specific things that they have, financially? That's more broad in terms of what their differences might be, but it still might be something where you could get involved with certain groups within that niche.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and again, that's kind of brings us full circle as a little bit of a recap. Is it's useful to go through your own background, and if you came from a different field, perhaps that should be your niche. but it's what are your hobbies? What are your interests? What's your family involved with? Who do you already know? And if that doesn't shine a light on it, the next step I think is always go through, assuming you're established, go through your current client list and say, who is it that I work with now? And if it were me, I ABC them. Who's the ones that are an A+, they're a joy to spirit, I work with them well, they really like me, everything's good. Which are the ones that I just despise? You know, I mean, if you just despise lawyers, you know, don't go round up 100 of them. You know, you will make your life miserable, right? But if you just love, you know, commercial real estate brokers or some other group of people, or if you love people who are into Afghan, whatever they're called, dogs, or dog shows or whatever, you know, just look at that's another way, is look at your current client list and say, who do I have that I love? Who do I have that is a good fit? Who financially is a good fit for what I'm trying to accomplish? And maybe that's a good way to go. And what we were talking about for the last few minutes was, if you don't come up with something there, you know, draw a radius and figure out who the big employers are, or figure out what a narrow niche slice of a career is, and figure out how to go target it. And you know, one of the projects we've had recently is targeting owners of $10 million and under businesses who are 50 to 60, looking to liquidate, getting to them pre-liquidity event so that we can help them facilitate, make sure once they get the money that it's not you know, dissipated, and partnering with business brokers, franchise brokers, and partnering with business development experts who get to them ahead of that point, so that we're there and we've got our foot in the door, and we make sure we help facilitate that. I mean, that's just, you know, an example of a way to really narrow cast in and be really on top of that. Hey, yeah, we've been droning on for about 50 minutes here. I want to transition to something quickly. And Greg, as you know, we have to, and Mindy, we have to go to yet another one of these for an hour and a half, and then yet another one for an hour here back to back. We're kind of schedule tight today, and I can't even blame Mindy, sadly, on this one today. But let me share some information quickly before we go to a little bit of a summary. I do see some familiar names on the meeting. So there are some people who have joined us live. And of course, there's, I think, another 100 or so that will probably be joining us by watching the replay as opposed to joining us live. But for many of you who are with us live, you've probably already read my latest book, latest of several, but The Extraordinary Marketing for Financial Advisors. If you haven't, that's the one I was holding up earlier, at least the author's proof copy of it. I would highly recommend it, but let me explain how it came about. It came about in the process of us putting together a complete marketing program. It's DVD, CD, and if that's too old tech for you, it's all on MP3 and video streaming, and video and I guess MP4 and MP3 downloads as well. But it's a complete marketing program. The book was put together after the fact as a support tool, as a companion piece to the marketing program, and I think it holds up pretty well independently on its own, but it really was developed as the companion piece for this marketing program. So if you don't have the marketing program and the book and haven't gone through it and studied it, and frankly, you know, I believe with, you know, this is one of those books that merits, you know, reading it quickly and then going back and reading it slowly with a highlighter, and then going back and reading it more slowly with the notebook to give you action steps. But if you haven't gone through both of those, you really need to. And what you're going to get is contrarian's view of how marketing should be done for a financial advisor in order to stand out from the crowd, to be different, and to really fill your practice with the right people and repel the wrong people. What we always find is that this is a complete paradigm shift for 99.9% of advisors who have gone through it so far. In other words, it gives them a complete different way of looking at the world, gives them tools that they had never thought about before. What might you add to that, Mindy? Is that a fair way to say that?
Let me unmute before I speak. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just such a great set of resources. And in talking with advisors who've gotten the program and looked at it, there's the little ahas that oftentimes make a big difference that they get when they go back and look through it and go, oh, yeah, I tried LinkedIn, it didn't work, but oh, look at this, aha. This makes it better. Or, oh, I've tried this. And so I think that that part of it is just, as people work with the materials, invaluable.
Yeah. The second thing I would say that we find is once somebody has gone through all of these materials, they have really nailed down thoroughly the what. What should I be doing? How should I be thinking about it? They really nailed down the strategy. But as you know, once you really start to implement, it always seems clearer and more straightforward, on the surface than when you start digging into it more thoroughly. What I should be doing day to day on LinkedIn, what I should be doing day to day with direct mail, what kind of list I should be targeting, how I should be positioning myself, how to develop a book or a report or a webinar and so forth. And what we have decided to do, and we have several people on the meeting who work with us or have worked with us at a much higher level, but what we have created is a very entry level method of working with us. And what it does is it creates an ongoing support mechanism beyond going through the marketing program and beyond the books, where we go through one topic a month and really get to the nuts and bolts of how to implement that topic. And then we have an open Q&A and open discussion form availability to help with the developmental steps and to help everybody understand how in their city, their niche, their particular area that they can implement. And sometimes it's, how do I deal with the idiots in my office and get them to understand the value and how this works? We've done a number of running interference with compliance as well to help them understand the process. But the mechanisms are, some written materials, but it's very topic specific, independent topic of the month, where we send out a newsletter that's very focused on implementation of one thing at a time, how to maximize an area of LinkedIn, how to maximize your positioning as the go-to advisor, et cetera. But there's a number of topics that we rotate through over the year. And then once a month we go through and we have a real high level discussion of one of those topics, but very focused, very in-depth, and very step-by-step of how to do it. And then we combine a discussion forum with an ongoing interactive situation, and then a monthly Q&A. Now, and of course, we have any number of resources available. Most of those resources are the digital delivery of that, as well as our ongoing developmental materials. But what we're going to be doing with this at a much lower level than what we have done in the past with higher level members is we're launching this at a super low tuition rate. It's just $297 a month, and that includes all of these bonuses in one thing or another. I just posted in the chat room the direct link to this, but it is financialadvisorwealth.com/inner circle. With it, there's no long-term commitment, there's no long-term obligation, but it includes right up front what normally we would be charging about $3,000 for. It includes all these initial upfront programs and bonuses and so forth. And then it includes the $297 a month includes all of these resources and materials to implement, including setting aside time with us and oftentimes other special guests to answer your questions, to really hone in on what resources you need, what targeting you need to do, and how you need to implement it. So just to wrap up today before we run out, is if you were to go to financialadvisorwealth.com/inner circle, that's a really good way to plow the field ahead of time before some of you want to work with us on a much higher level of coaching, where it's much more support on every week and every very specific issue. But this is a way to really get started, to learn the basics. And right now, as I said, we're launching it at $297 a month. June 1st, we're going to shift it to $497 a month, which I meant to do May 1st. We got caught up in some other projects and didn't. But you can still go ahead and register for that. You'll be on our list to be getting the monthly deep dive, the monthly Q&A. You'll be involved in our active discussion forum, and you'll be involved in receiving the newsletters, including our material from Lee Miltier, referred to as Millionaire Sparks, which is very comprehensive every month on just expanding your thinking and expanding your horizons on getting your business going. Greg, what would you add to that before we wrap up here? You're muted now, I think. Or perhaps your mic died.
Yeah, your mic's not connected.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see. Is that
There you
better?
go.
There you go. Now you're good. Now you're good.
It seemed like it was connected. I said something earlier and it didn't come through. So
Yeah.
yeah, the great thing about this in the package is that when the book is a really good dive into what you should do for marketing, but the package has everything like laid out A to Z. So let's say it's something to do with your website, or let's say it's something to do with LinkedIn marketing or direct marketing or mail. You read it in the book, and then the package has like a very deep dive that we went through for everybody. And then in these processes here that we're doing in the monthly sessions, and when we get to talk to you, you're getting live help from us on what you're doing specifically. And you need to have a lot of marketing going on, and then once you really get a flood of clients in, then a lot of times your systems further on break down, and we'll help you with all of that. And our goal is to get you to be a very high level advisor in the top 5% of the industry, so then we can work with you even more deeply. This really gets you started, and it'll get you to that point. So this is your recipe for all of that right here. And all of the package gets you started, so you'll have the best library you can possibly have in the A to Z list. But then when we're working with you individually, or as a group, but you'll get to work with us directly every month. This is going to make all the difference in the world for you to be able to implement everything that we're doing, or that we want you to do. Yeah.
At a very minimal monthly tuition and a very easy low-hanging fruit way of getting started.
Not to be mean on it, but if somebody can't afford that tuition, then it's pretty hard to think that you're going to stay in business.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not willing to invest that on building your own knowledge of your own business, on how to create better and a higher volume of new client flow, you probably should hang up your spurs now. So that is a fair way to say it. But again, it's financialadvisorwealth.com/inner circle. I have posted it in the chat box here, and I have posted it on the Facebook live stream as well. So I would recommend go to that. That's going to be up at that tuition level of very briefly. We're going to shift that. And by all means, start with right away, go through the book, but then go through the CDs and the DVDs or the online streaming and MP3 downloads, and use that as your starting point, because it's going to open your eyes, expand your horizon, and dramatically reframe the way you think about your business. On that note, we have to jump off to yet another meeting today. And I hope to be working with many of you who are either on here with us live, and some of you are already clients or have been clients. It's great to see you. And then we'll be going from there.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. And I will see you in the next room.
All right, yeah, see you later.
Bye, guys.